Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've mentioned before about how it came to be that Jay Leno wrote the forwards to two of my books. And also, for instance, that like last November, my brother and I and my father went out to visit Jay at his garage in California, and he took us for a ride in a Duesenberg. And that all goes back to a funny little story. And I've told it before, but I decided for once to actually go and get the video and show you the video. And I'll explain. So I wrote a book called Death's Door about the Italian Hall disaster. And the book came out in, I think, 2006, late in 2006. And the book did really, really well, especially in Michigan. And so I was very happy about that. It's the book I'm most proud of. And I've written a bunch of books since then. And so I was going into work one day in 2007. And I went into work, turned on my computer, and my email was blowing up. And I was getting emails from people saying, Steve, I saw you on Jay Leno last night. Saw you on Jay Leno. Now, I wasn't on Jay Leno last night as far as I know, so it's news to me. So I wrote back to a couple of these people going, what are you talking about? And people had assumed I knew or was involved somehow. But Jay had done his segment called Headlines. And in the Headlines segment, he had referenced me. So I am now going to show you that segment. It's from The Tonight Show, 2007. And I'm going to let Jay explain the story to you.
Here's Death's Door, the true story behind Michigan's largest mass murder. Death's Door. Look, makes a great holiday gift.
So, as you may have gathered, someone ran an article preceding Christmas saying that my book would make a great Christmas gift. And I believe the article, the ad, was from a newspaper called the Finnish American Reporter. And the Finnish American Reporter is an obscure little paper, but I subscribe to it because, of course, I do. And there was a bookstore up there called Northwind Books. And I believe Northwind Books took out a full-page ad preceding Christmas suggesting Christmas gifts that you could buy at Northwind Books. And Death's Door was selling quite well at that time, so they suggested that makes a great Christmas gift. So when I heard that this has happened, I then took a copy of Death's Door and gift wrapped it in the brightest, gaudiest paper I could find, put bows all over it, and sent it to Jay Leno, care of NBC. But I had also recently written something about the Chrysler turbine car. And I was having a hard time getting anybody in publishing to take it seriously because it was a car book. And so I included a manuscript of that with the other book. So there's a big package I sent to Jay, and of course that's the Chrysler turbine car right there, which for some odd reason has got a $100 bill on its hood. So we'll put that over here on the Tucker. So, Chrysler turbine car. So I put a note in there and said, hey Jay, thanks for plugging my book on your show. And I know you like cars. Here's something I wrote about the Chrysler turbine car. And sent it off and thought I'd never hear anything again. A couple weeks goes by, and my secretary buzzes me one day and says, Steve, there's a guy who claims he's Jay Leno on the phone. Now, I hadn't told anybody I'd done that. And a friend of mine would routinely call my office claiming to be all kinds of people. And so she thought it was my friend. But I knew it was Jay. So I closed the door, pick up the phone. Hey, Jay, how you doing? Jay's on the other end of the line, Jay Leno. And he goes, hey, I got a question. I go, what's that? And he goes, are you mad at me? I go, no, why? And he goes, well, some people get mad. They think we're picking on them or making fun of them. And some people do react badly to our headlines segment. I said, no, dude. I had phone calls and notes from all around the country, people who said they saw me on your show, and I was only on the screen by name for 10 seconds? So I thought it was funny, but I probably sold books, so thank you. And he goes, okay. He goes, but let me ask you a question. He goes, you've done a lot of research on this Chrysler turbine car. And I go, yeah, I love those cars. He goes, so do I. I saw one at the World's Fair in 1964. I said, really cool. And so we talked for a little while. He said, I'm going to hang on to your card just in case I ever have legal trouble in Michigan. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. He hangs on to my card. A while goes by, and one day he calls me back. And my secretary goes, Steve, Jay Leno. And I told people by this time that I'd spoken to Jay. And so I pick up the phone, and Jay goes, Steve, when you were writing your book, you interviewed a guy named Bill Carey. And by the way, Bill Carey is on the cover of the book that got published. So I'll put a picture of that up on the screen. And he goes, is there any way I can talk to Bill Carey? I said, sure. Why do you want to talk to Bill Carey? And it turns out that Jay had bought himself a turbine car. There aren't that many out there. Only 9 of them exist. And of the 9 that exist, only 5 of them run. 3 of them were owned by Chrysler. And Chrysler had 3 identical turbine cars. And Jay talked him into selling him one. So Jay bought a turbine car. So he has a turbine car. He goes, I got a turbine car, and I want to know if Bill Carey can help me. Because Bill Carey was the guy who was the technician on the program who kept the cars running back in 1964. And still very, very sharp. Lived nearby where I was. And so I said, no problem at all. He's still around. I'll hook you up with the guy. So I called Bill and said, hey, Bill, Jay Leno is going to call you. It's not a hoax. It's really Jay Leno. Jay just got himself a turbine car and he might want your help. And Bill's like, great, I'm a big fan. Long story short, Bill Carey is in California when Jay unloads the car from a car hauler, walks Jay's mechanics all through everything they need to know, tells Jay everything he wants to know, spends a lot of time out there taking care of all of Jay's turbine car needs. And when Bill comes back from California, he calls me. He goes, dude, that was so fun. I got to tell you. And he tells me all about his visit with Jay Leno. Then Jay calls me and says, Steve, I want to thank you for hooking me up with Bill Carey. The guy was a wealth of information. Most useful thing I could possibly have done with respect to that car. I mean, it's amazing what the guy knows. And you know, after all these years, he remembers all this stuff, you know. And so I said, I'm really glad that worked out for you. And Jay goes, well, do you ever make it back to California? And I said, well, I went to law school in California. I've got some friends out there. I go back from time to time. Why? He goes, if you're ever in California, I'll let you drive the turbine car. No, I said, really? He goes, yeah. I go, well, I got my calendar right here. Do you have your calendar? And he goes, oh, sure. And so we start comparing notes and we pick a date a couple weeks down the road. And I said, yeah, I'll see you then. And he gave me the instructions on how to find him and all that stuff. And then I was talking to my friend Cliff, who is the editor at Mopar Action Magazine. And I mentioned I'm going out to California and I'm going to get to drive Jay Leno's turbine car. He says he's going to let me drive it. And I said, I wrote articles for them at the time. I said, if I write you an article, do you want to publish it? And he goes, yeah. He goes, but is there any chance you can get me in? And now, Cliff, besides being the editor at Mopar Action Magazine, is also a very, very talented photographer. He goes, among other things, he goes, I could take all the pictures for your story. And I said, let me ask. So I called up Jay and I said, hey, Jay, is it okay if I bring the guy from Mopar Action Magazine? He wants to take some pictures. And I'm going to write a story about your car, if that's okay. And Jay goes, no, of course that's okay. I love Mopar Action. So I called Cliff back and go, yeah, we're good to go. So Cliff flies out, I fly out, we meet. Saturday morning, we get together. We go out to Jay's garage. We go there. We meet him. He gives us a tour. We're walking around. He's explaining the cars to us, showing us stuff. Cliff's taking millions of photographs. Finally, he goes, hey, let's go look at the turbine car. Go look at the turbine car. We all get in it. Jay's driving. We're driving around Burbank on a Saturday afternoon in a Chrysler turbine car. First time I've ever been in one moving. It's crazy. It's the most unbelievably cool thing. And Cliff goes, is there some place we can go where it'll be nicely lit and without obstacles and stuff around us so I can walk around the car and take a lot of nice big photographs of it? And Jay goes, yeah, I know a spot. So we go behind an office complex. There's a huge parking lot back there and it's wide open because it's a Saturday. And we park the car and we're walking around and taking pictures. And as we're walking back to the car afterwards, Jay goes, want to drive it? And I literally thought he meant that as a figure of speech. I didn't take him to mean that seriously. I go, I'd love to, but he goes, no, not a problem. He hands me the keys. Jay and Cliff get in the car. I get in the car. I go, Jay, walk me through the process. And he explains to me the startup procedure with what, do this, do that, do this. Starts up, start driving. I go, where to? And I thought he was going to say, just do a couple loops the parking lot. He goes, no, take us back to the garage. And I'm like, okay. So we drive back to the garage. In the car along the way, I'm driving along and people's heads are snapping around as they hear us coming because the sound the thing makes. And we're discussing alternative power plants for cars. Guy from Mopar Action Magazine, Jay Leno, car collector, me, just me. We're discussing electric cars, turbine cars, internal combustion cars, the differences between diesels and gasoline, steam cars. And somewhere along the line, Jay goes, have you guys ever ridden in a steam car? And I go, I haven't. And Cliff goes, I haven't. And Jay goes, oh, we'll do that next. We'll do that next. So we go back to the garage, park the turbine car. We take some pictures of it that we use, Cliff does, on the cover of the magazine, but to accompany the article that I wrote for Mopar Action Magazine. And we take some pictures and we go, okay. We walk over and Jay goes, we're going to go for a ride in that. I'm thinking it was a 1908 steam car. I could be wrong on the date, plus or minus a year, but an early 1900s White's steam car. And you got to fill a tank up with water. You got to light the pilot. I believe the accelerator is actually a wheel inside the steering wheel. You got to drive with two hands on the wheel, but actually one hand on each wheel. The pedals do other weird things, but it's open like a big old car you'd see in a parade. And again, we're driving around Burbank on a Saturday afternoon in Jay Leno's steam car. And we were driving by, there's a really good bookstore in Burbank. We stopped at the bookstore. And there's actually a spot in front of the store they have marked off with cones in case Jay wants to come by and park some cool car there. So Jay parks the steam car there. We go inside. We're looking at books. We come out, go back to Jay's garage. He treated us to lunch. He had one of the guys fire barbecue, big old barbecue lunch. Having a great time out there. As we're wrapping the day up, Jay's talking to me. He goes, Steve, it's really too bad that you can't get that book on turbine cars published so that more people can learn about the beautiful program that Chrysler had. And I said, I'm telling you, Jay, I've pitched it to people. They all think that car guys don't read. They don't like car books. And Jay goes, I read. I'm a car guy. And I said, no, I understand that. He goes, would it help you if I wrote the foreword to the book? If I wrote a foreword to your book, would that help you? And I said, yeah, it would, but would you do that? He goes, I've done that before. And he actually went and pulled out some Xerox copies he'd made of forewords he'd written to guys' books. And he wrote the foreword to this one guy's coffee table book on Duesenbergs. And he goes, so if that'll help you, I will write the foreword to your book. So when I got back to Michigan, I called a friend of mine who was in publishing. She was the editor for a big magazine. I had written articles for her. And then she left and gone someplace else, but she was in the magazine book publishing industry in New York. And so I called her and I said, hey, look, do you know any agents who sell nonfiction? Because I told her the story I just told you. And she said, yes, I do. Call this guy. She goes, he won't answer the phone. Call the number. Leave a message that says, Marcy told me to call you. Here's my number. That's all you need to say, and he'll call you back. I did that, and he called me back. He goes, what can I do for you? So I tell him the story, and he goes, I got to see the manuscript and make sure that it's publishable. But if it is, with a foreword by Jay Leno, I'm sure we can sell it. So I send it to the guy. Guy calls me back, goes, dude, I can sell this tomorrow. Want me to? I said, absolutely. So that man is now my agent. He has since sold, 8 or 9 books for me. I don't know. I lost track. But he's my agent, and he got that book sold based on the fact that one of the things he was selling was in a foreword by Jay Leno. Jay Leno will write the foreword to it. So when we got a deal with the publisher, I contacted Jay and said, Jay, thanks to you, I got a deal with the publisher. And can you write me a foreword? He said, yes. He hammered out a foreword. And the book got published. The book did very, very well. The book was favorably reviewed by the Wall Street Journal and other people. It's done very, very well. It came out in hardcover, then it came out in paperback, and it is still in print. And that's about 10 years ago when that book came out. And then a little while later, I decided to write a book about Tucker, Preston Tucker, and his car, and his battle to build the car of tomorrow. And I remembered that when I was walking through the garage with Jay, he had pointed to a Tatra, Czechoslovakian car, pre-war, Tatra. And I noticed it had a Cyclops headlight. And I mentioned that, and Jay goes, oh, this car here is in many ways a forerunner of the Tucker. It's got a Cyclops headlight, and it's rear engine, rear wheel drive. And there's a lot of these things that have in common, and many people think that Tucker may have been partially inspired by this car. And Jay does not have a Tucker, and didn't have one at the time either. And so I sent a note to Jay and said, hey, Jay, I'm going to write a book on the Tucker. Would you be interested in writing a foreword to that too? And he said, absolutely, I'd love to. And so I called up my agent and said, well, not only am I going to write the book on Tucker, but Jay's going to write a foreword for it. And we got that book published also. Same publisher that did the Chrysler turbine car. And it turns out that the people at the publisher who put out the Chrysler turbine car weren't expecting it to do as well as it did. And in fact, my agent still is startled because we still get royalty checks. And once every 6 months, I get a note from my agent saying, Steve, Turbine Car is still selling. And the Tucker book is still selling also, but the Turbine Car is so much older. And there's a life cycle to books. And when they come out, they sell a lot if they do okay. And then they kind of tail off until they finally trickle out to where they're out of print or nobody cares about them anymore. And some of my other books have done that. But the Turbine Car in particular has stayed popular to where they keep it in print. It still sells. I still get requests for it. And the Tucker book sells well also. But both of those forwards written by Jay Leno. And it's a very, very convoluted story from there, how it happens. But it turns out that my brother is now helping Jay with something. And that's what led to Jay inviting us to bring my father out and take him for a ride in a Duesenberg. And so as I was sitting in the back seat of that Duesenberg, riding around the streets of Burbank, California, with my dad in the front seat, Jay Leno driving, my brother sitting next to me, I thought back to a joke Jay Leno told in a headline segment back in 2007. That's a few years ago, my friends. But that's how it all started. That's the complete story. That's everything you need to know about how that came about. And yes, it is an extremely odd way to start a relationship like that. Because if you think about this, I could have seen that and said, hey, people saw my name on TV. That's cool. And might not have sent anything in. Or I might have sent something in. His secretary might have looked at it and said, somebody sent us a joke in response to the joke. Who cares? But the manuscript for the car book on the Turbine Car, I think, caught Jay's attention. He's a car guy. And he did ask me at one point in time, why don't you get that published and get it out there? And I said, I was having trouble with that. And he said, well, I can help you with that. And he did. So I'm eternally grateful to Jay Leno, one of the nicest guys on earth. I'm going to end by telling you, because people always ask me, they say, Steve, I watched Jay Leno's Garage on TV, or I watched it on YouTube, or I used to watch The Tonight Show. What kind of a guy is he? And I tell them that the guy you see on TV is the guy that you see working on his cars on a Saturday, not on TV. Same guy. That is the key to his success. He's a funny guy. He's very funny. His stand-up is great. As a host on a TV show, he's great. But he's just authentic. And what you see on TV is him. We've all heard the stories about the host who on TV smiles and laughs, but in real life, they're screaming at people. Okay? That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is somebody who is so authentic, you can point a camera at him. He doesn't need to change the way he's acting. And people go, he's a nice guy, funny guy. I'd like to know him. I'll hang out with him. And that, of course, is what you do when you have a TV show like The Tonight Show for decades, where people tune in every single night. They start to feel like they're your friend because the guy on the other side of the camera seems like he could be your friend. And the way he seems on camera is how he is in real life. And I can tell you that because I've met him face to face several times, and he's done such great things for me. Like I said, I am eternally grateful. One of the most important things, if not the most important thing, that has gotten me to where I am today, particularly with publishing, is the gracious actions of Jay Leno. So there's the story. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.